Hello, beautiful and amazing people. How are you? Welcome to the Wealthy Trustee webinar. I am so excited to see you this evening. So I just want to check the polls in the room. Where are you guys tuning in from? So go ahead and put it in the chat. Where are you guys tuning in from? Right now, I am in Atlanta, Georgia. So let me know. Okay, I see Tampa. All right, that's awesome. South Carolina, Ohio, Texas. I love it. I love it. North Carolina. Okay, awesome. I love it. I love it. So it's so nice to see you guys this evening. The UK, yes, let's go. All right, Florida, North Carolina, Charlotte. I like Charlotte. Charlotte's a nice city. So, if you guys are able to be on camera, that would be beautiful. Sometimes I feel all alone by myself, and I would like to stare at your face too. Okay, I know you guys are staring at my face. So, without further ado, let's just jump into this webinar. This is going to be a 90-minute webinar, you guys, where I'm going to be teaching you guys the blueprint on how to build wealth the right way. So how to build it efficiently and effectively utilizing a trust. So I'm going to teach you everything that I know about setting up a trust, as well as different ways of getting structured and pretty much how to protect your assets, right? A lot of us, we are so focused on making money that we never think to ourselves, how am I going to protect this money? I bought this house. How am I going to protect this house? I have this car. How am I going to protect this car? Right? And so today, what I'm going to teach you is everything that I know about asset protection. And I don't mean everything, but whatever it is that I can cover in the next 90 minutes. Okay. So my name is Christina Eve. I'm the founder of 7 Ways to Wealth, you guys. And this is a financial literacy company where we teach you everything about financial literacy, right? So that you guys can grab this information and apply it in your day-to-day living so that you can build the legacy, right? Because a lot of us, we're talking about generational wealth, but we don't have the tools. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncover the tools so that you can actually build that generational wealth and you can establish that legacy for your family, okay? So a quick disclaimer, I am not an attorney. I am not a certified public accountant. I am a licensed financial professional and I am a licensed real estate professional. So I am going to be teaching you from a standpoint of trusteeship. I have been a trustee for 11 years, okay? So I'm going to teach you everything that I know about trust and all other aspects within my field. So without further ado, let's get started here, okay? So I'm going to go through the slides. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And after I'm done with the webinar, then I'll open up the floor for Q&A and I'll answer any and all questions that you guys might have, okay? So let me dive right in. One moment. Let's share our screen here. All right, here is the screen. Okay, perfect. So the first thing that I want, oh wait, hold on. Screen pause, did it pause? 1 second, stop. Let's try to restart this. Let's see here. Okay, can you see my screen? Yes? Okay, awesome. Thank you. So, first of all, let's get started with me teaching you what a trust is, okay? Now, a trust, a lot of people, they've heard the term trust. They're not familiar with what it is. They heard the term trust fund. They heard the term trust fund baby, and they're like, what is that? Right? And so a trust is an entity. It's a living, breathing entity just like you. So you are a living, breathing entity, okay? So out here in society, you operate with your name and your social security. So out here in society, a trust operates with its name and its EIN number, okay? So now that we know that it is a living, breathing entity, right? A trust can do anything and everything that you can do as a natural person. Meaning that if you can go and buy a house, a trust can buy a house. If you could generate income, a trust can generate income. If you can buy a car, a trust can buy a car. If you could write a book, a trust could write a book. Okay, so there's no limitations to what a trust can and cannot do, which is good. That means that a trust is very powerful. And I'm here to tell you today that a trust is the most powerful entity in the entire world, okay? There is no more powerful entity than a trust, okay? That's why only the 1% able to have access to this type of entity, right? And because of this knowledge and information that has been passed down from generation to generation, and the 99%, they don't even know what a trust is, right? And so now when it comes to a trust, how does it actually come into existence, right? How does it become an entity? Well, you have to actually establish a contract. So it becomes a trust by contract. And in this contract, there are several different sections. So one of the sections is a declaration where you're declaring what it is and what it is not. So in the contract, you have to declare, hey, this contract, I'm setting up a trust. I'm not setting up a partnership, a joint venture, an LLC, or a corporation, right? And then the other section is the bylaws. That's the rules and regulations about how the trust is to be operated, okay? So that's all the terms and conditions that we're setting inside of the trust, which we call provisions, okay? So just think about that. And so now, what I want you to know is the different parties involved in this contract, okay? So you have the grantor, which is the creator of the trust. That's the individual that is going to be creating the trust with the trustee, and that is for the benefit of somebody else or something else, which is the beneficiary, okay? So the grantor establishes the trust and then donates the first gift to the trust, okay? Now, when you're doing your research, because you know I want you to do research after you're done with this webinar, when you're doing your research, you might also see other terms that refer to grantor. You might see the term settlor, you might see the term trustor, okay? So just keep that in mind. Now, the second party involved is the trustee. That is the person who is going to be controlling the assets that are inside of the trust. They have full control over that money. They do the day-to-day operations of the trust. They manage the trust. They're carrying out all the bylaws that's inside of the trust, and they're administering everything that needs to be done. So for example, if someone needs to sign on behalf of the trust, it's going to be the trustee. So they have full power and control over the entire trust, okay? And the third party is the beneficiary. So that's the inheritor of the trust. That's the individual that's going to inherit the assets that are inside of the trust once the trust is terminated, okay? Once the trust is terminated, those assets go straight to the beneficiary. But in the meantime, what happens is the beneficiary is going to receive gifts from the trust as well as distributions. Those distributions are like monthly allowances, right? And it's just going to be based on their beneficial percentage, okay? So we'll talk about that later on in the presentation. So let's continue. Now, there's different types of trust. So what I'm going to do is there's hundreds of different types of trust. I'm going to just give you a few categories, okay? So the first category that I want to give you is express versus implied. An express trust is a written trust, so you actually see it in that physical contract, okay? It's in black and white, it's on paper, you can physically touch it, you have to physically sign it, versus an implied trust. An implied trust, which is where you have that verbal agreement, right? So that's the verbal agreement that has transpired between the grantor and the trustee, but then it always stays verbal. It always stays oral, right? It never goes into writing, okay? So the next category that I want to give you is simple versus complex. A simple trust is shorter in nature, so that means that there's less terms and conditions or provisions, and the trustee is required to distribute all the money that's inside of the trust. So nothing needs to be left over, versus a complex trust. So a complex trust is longer in nature, there's more provisions, there are more terms and conditions, but the trustee doesn't have to distribute all the money. So money can be held in the trust fund, okay? Now, the next category that I want to give you guys is discretionary versus non-discretionary. So a discretionary trust is where the trustee has full discretion to be able to make decisions for the trust that's not inside of the contract. Versus a non-discretionary trust means that that trustee cannot make those decisions for the trust or on behalf of the trust if it's not inside of the contract, okay? And then the next category that I want to give you is statutory versus non-statutory. So a statutory trust is where every single state has its own statutes and codes, right? And so those state statutes and codes are labeled as laws. Now, those state statutes and codes can either be embedded in your contract or not embedded in your contract. So a statutory trust means that the statutes are embedded inside of the contract. So if that is the case, that means that that trust is limited. That means that you can only operate that trust in that one state. That means that that trust has to become a part of the public records and it has to be publicly registered in that state. So there's a lot of limitations because now people are going to be aware of your trust. It's not private versus a non-statutory trust. So the non-statutory trust is where you have no state statutes or codes embedded inside of your contract, which means that you have the liberty to be able to operate this trust in all 50 states plus all of the US territories, which is a good thing because you have that flexibility and your trust gets to remain private because you're not required to register it publicly with the state so that everyone's able to look up your trust, okay? So the last category that I want to give you is revocable versus irrevocable. Now, when we're talking about what we call revocability or irrevocability, we are referring to the grantor only. So let's talk about a revocable trust. So what we're saying is that with the revocable trust, the grantor is going to have revocability. That means that they can revoke the trust, that they can make changes to the trust, they can terminate trustees and beneficiaries, they can take back property from the trust. So typically with that type of trust, the grantor is going to serve as the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary, which means that they're going to be all three parties. So if they're all three parties, that means that this trust is seen as their alter ego. So if the trust is seen as their alter ego, that means that the trust is seen as them, and that trust is going to be operating under that grantor Social Security, which means that that trust is not going to protect any assets. Why? Because if there's any creditors that want to come after the grantor, they can also come after the revocable trust because that revocable trust has been operating under that grantor Social Security, right? So that can actually put the trust in a detrimental situation because let's just say that, that they sue the trust, then the judge can pierce through the trust, force you to produce the trust in court, and then that means that that trust becomes a part of the public records. And so that means that everyone's able to see the contract, see the net worth of the trust, see who the beneficiaries are, see all the assets that you have inside of the trust. So what I want you to know is that with a revocable trust, your assets are not protected. Now let's talk about an irrevocable trust. With an irrevocable trust, what happens is the grantor has irrevocability. That means that they cannot make any amendments or changes. They cannot remove the trustees or the beneficiaries or any assets that they've placed inside of the trust, and they cannot terminate the trust. So the grantor has no power and control after they have set up the trust and handed it over to the trustee, okay? So when it comes to that irrevocability, the beautiful thing about an irrevocable trust is that irrevocable trust is seen as a separate entity. So that means that that irrevocable trust is operating with its own name and operating with its own 9-digit number, which is the EIN. It's not operating under the grantor Social Security, which is beautiful because you want it to be seen as a separate entity, because now the assets that you place inside there are protected because you are not the trust is not you, which is beautiful because if some creditors want to come after the if they want to come after like the grantor or even the trustee, they cannot go after the trust, okay? So if that trust ends up in litigation, the judge will not pierce through an irrevocable trust, okay? So that means that your assets are fully protected with an irrevocable trust. So now that you understand the different types of trust, let's talk about how to actually create a trust, okay? Now, let's go to step one. In step one, it says for you to determine what type of trust that you want to create. Now, I gave you a list of different categories that every single trust falls under, right? And now, if you are intentional about protecting your assets like your house, your cash, your cars, right? Then what you want to do is you want to establish a bulletproof trust. A bulletproof trust that's going to hold up in court in the event that someone wants to make claims against your house or try to take your assets or try to sue you, okay? So with that being said, the type of trust that I recommend falls under the following categories, okay? So it has to be an express trust, meaning that it's in writing. It has to be a complex trust so that it is able to hold trust funds. It has to be a discretionary trust so that the trustee is able to make decisions outside of the contract. It has to be a non-statutory trust so that it can operate in all 50 states and all U.S. territories. And it has to be irrevocable in nature so that it actually is able to hold up in court. It won't be pierced or dismantled, and it protects your assets 100%, okay? So just do your research and your due diligence based off of the nature of how your trust needs to be structured. Now let's move on to number two. In number two, we're actually going to create a name for a trust. So now we've decided, hey, I want to create a bulletproof trust, right? What am I going to name it? Well, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to not make the mistakes that most people make. So when most people are establishing a trust, they will name it after themselves. That is the biggest mistake that I've seen a lot of people make, and I don't want you to go down that road. Because you have to understand that you are creating a trust for privacy. You are creating a trust so that people and like creditors, people that want to sue you right there, they don't have to know that you're associated with the trust, right? So you have to have some type of obscurity involved. So with that being said, you don't want to name it after yourself, okay? So you're going to use unique words in order to create your trust. So for example, right, this plant behind me, this is my favorite plant, right? This plant is called a monstera. So let's just say I want to name my trust the Monstera Estate, right? That is what I'm going to name my trust. Now, my name is Christina Yvette. No one on this green planet is going to know that Christina Yvette is associated with the Monstera Estate unless I disclose it, okay? So that is what you want to do. You want to choose unique names or words in combination with each other so that you are able to name that trust. Now, the second thing I want you to be aware of is that you do not have to have the word trust in the actual name. A lot of people get confused and think that it has to end in trust when it doesn't, okay? So you don't even want people to know that the entity that you're operating is a trust, okay? So you see the name that I just gave you, it ends in the word estate, right? So just think about those things because you naming your trust is actually very important, okay? Because once you establish your trust, you can't change the name. So the next thing that I want you to think about is the different parties that you're going to appoint for the trust, okay? So let's think about who are you going to place as the grantor, right? Who are you going to place as the trustee? So typically we want to be the trustee so that we're able to have full control over the assets that are inside of the trust. Now, who are you going to place as the beneficiaries? So typically the beneficiaries are going to be your children, but if you don't have children, then they're going to be like your spouse or your next of kin, siblings, things like that, okay? And then lastly, the other party that I want you to think about is the successor. The successor is the successor trustee, which is the individual that is going to take over for you in the event that something happens to you. So if you transition, if you become incapacitated, if you decide, hey, I'm too old, I can't operate this trust, I want to resign, then you need someone to take over and you need someone to pick up where you left off. That person is the successor trustee. So they're going to continue to operate the trust because the trust is designed to outlive you. Okay, so just keep that in mind. When you're setting up a trust, you can set it up for anywhere between 1 year to upwards of 100 years, right? I know that most likely I'm not going to be here for the next 100 years. I probably got about 70 years left in me. So I know that I have to appoint a successor, right? That's going to outlive me and that's going to be able to take over and continue to operate the trust. Because if you don't have a trustee to operate the trust, then the trust is inoperative and you have assets and money that's just sitting inside of an entity where nobody's controlling it. So just think about that because a lot of us, we have these assets, we have this money, but we never put a succession plan in place. So that's what I'm here to tell you today. Put that succession plan in place, okay? You got to think about the next generation and how the money and the assets are going to actually get to the next generation. So let's talk about number three. right? And so number three, we're going to actually create the trust agreement. Okay, so now we're establishing the contract. Now we're putting all the terms and conditions together, or what we call provisions. Now, one of the provisions that I highly recommend that you have inside of your trust is the spendthrift provisions. So a spendthrift is a beneficiary that wants to blow all the money. Okay, and so we want to avoid that. So what we want to do is we want to control the money from the grave. So the way that we're going to do that is by establishing spendthrift provisions. So some of those provisions could be things like an age restriction to say, hey, you can receive your distribution once you hit 25 years old, right? Because let's just say that the distribution is $10,000 per month. A 3-year-old does not need $10,000 per month. I'm sorry. But a 30-year-old might. So you want to put that age restriction in place. Let's just say you want to put an education restriction and tell them, hey, you have to have, some type of business training, or you have to go and learn how to become a future trustee, or you have to do budgeting and accounting, or you have to have a college degree, right? So you're able to put those restrictions in place. Let's just say that you want them to be able to do a distribution restriction, meaning that you want to tell them, hey, you can spend the money on real estate and your lifestyle and education and stocks and bonds, right? But you cannot spend the money on gambling and lottery and tobacco and illicit drugs, right? So you're able to tell them what they can and cannot spend the money on in order for them to qualify to get the $10,000 a month, right? Because at the end of the day, you're the one who built this legacy, okay? So you need to be giving them the right direction in order for them to be able to conserve the wealth that you have created. Now, let's move on to number four. Number four, we're actually going to notarize the trust. So that is going to make the trust legal for you to be able to operate it in society, okay, as an entity. So it's going to require 2 signatures, which is the grantor signature as well as the first trustee's signature. So once you have those signatures, it's going to get notarized. The notary is going to witness it. The notary is going to place their seal. Now you're able to operate the trust. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and fund the trust. So the way that we do that is we go and open up that trust fund bank account, right? So when you go to the bank, right? So now we're moving on to number 5, which is you opening up the trust fund bank account. So when it comes to the bank, right, you need to choose a bank that you're going to establish a financial banking relationship with, okay? And that bank, not now, my disclaimer to you is that not every bank offers trust accounts, okay? So do your research, do your due diligence, okay? So now that you have chosen a bank, right? Let's just say you're going to Wells Fargo, right? What you need to do is you need to go ahead and bring 2 pieces of information with you. You need to bring the certificate of trust, which is proof of identity that the trust exists. And you need to bring the EIN confirmation letter, which is that 9-digit number. It's very hard for you to open up a trust account without an EIN number, okay? So, and then you will be able to provide identification that you're the trustee, you're authorized to open up the trust bank account, you're authorized to sign on behalf of the trust, okay? So the types of accounts that you're going to be opening up are either checking accounts, savings account, money market accounts, or brokerage accounts, or even cash management accounts, okay? And the type of banks that, or financial institutions, are banks, credit unions as well, like our Navy Federals of the world, and then brokerages like the Charles Schwab and the Fidelity, okay? So you can go to those 3 different types of institutions in order to get that trust bank account. Now, when it comes to funding, right, you can fund it with whatever amount that you want. And these banks, they have a minimum. Some are 0, like Fidelity is 0, right? But some, their minimum is $100, $500, $1,000. So it just depends on the bank that you choose to establish that banking relationship with, okay? So now that you funded the trust, right, we're going to move on to number 6. So in number 6, what you need to do is you need to transfer the assets inside of those trusts, okay? Now, I'm here to give you another disclaimer, right? So your assets are not protected if they're not in the name of the trust. A lot of people get confused and think that they are going to set up a trust and then that's it, right? But there's 2 things that's required, One, you have to list the asset inside of the trust. So there's a special section inside of the trust called a schedule. In that schedule, that's where you're going to list the assets that belong to the trust. So let's just say you have a primary residence, right? You're going to go ahead and list that house in the name of the trust, right? So you're going to list that house there. Then what you need to do is you actually need to deed over their property from your personal name into the name of the trust. So remember, when you bought your house, right, they gave you a deed, most likely a warranty deed. So what you need to do is you need to redeed that property. You need to remove it from your personal name. You need to put it into the name of the trust. You need to go down to the county recorder's office and record a new deed, right? And so now the county recorder is going to accept that new deed, and now they're going to update the public records and the county records to show that the owner of that property is the trust, and it's no longer you. That is what protects the assets, not you just listing it on a piece of paper, right? You have to actually do the transfer, which we call a conveyance, okay? You have to do it with the county and depending on the assets with the state, okay? So if you have titles, right? Whatever it is that you have, deeds, titles, anything like that, those things need to be transferred, okay? That's the only way the assets are protected. So now what can a trust actually protect you from? It can protect you from bankruptcies, divorce, foreclosures, heavy taxations, lawsuits, and even probate, right? So let's talk about a few. So the first one I want to talk about is divorce, because a lot of us are unaware that a divorce is a transfer of wealth, right? So sometimes in a divorce, right, one spouse will end up with everything and the other spouse will end up with nothing, zero, right? And so in a divorce, right, it's going through the court system, and the spouse has to go ahead and provide all of their assets and all of their liabilities, right? And then the judge is going to decide who gets what, right? So now the way that a trust protects you from this is because you have to understand that if you set up a trust and you place assets into the trust, when if you get divorced 10 years into the future, right, they cannot pull that trust into your divorce, right? So one, you're not required to disclose the existence of the trust. Two, you're not required to disclose the contents of the trust. Three, you need to understand that you are not the trust, and the trust is not you. So you're the one who's getting a divorce. So everything that's in your personal name, meaning the W-2, the 401k, the pension, the credit cards, everything that's in your personal name is what's going to be included, right? So that is how a trust protects you from a divorce. Let's talk about heavy taxes, because a lot of us, right, we're living in states like California and New York where they're taking half, right? They're taking a large chunk of money from us. So what you want to do is you want to put yourself in a position to where you are reducing your tax liability, okay? So one thing that I need you to be aware of is that there's something called an inheritance tax. There's something called a death tax. I want you to know that the IRS taxes you when you die. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't think about that, right? I'm not walking around here thinking the IRS is taxing me when I'm dying, when I'm dead, right? But it's true, right? And so then that goes based off of whatever you're leaving behind to the next generation, right? Which are your children. So just think about that, because a trust can help you avoid those unnecessary taxes, inheritance tax, death tax, right? Now, another thing is about our income tax, right? So the beautiful thing when it comes to the IRS is that they will allow you to donate up to 60% of your annual gross income to your trust, right? To a specific type of trust, right? So that means that if I'm making $100,000 for the year, the IRS is going to let me donate 60,000 of that 100,000 to my trust. And then I'm only going to be taxed on 40,000 versus 100,000. So you're saving thousands of dollars on taxes that you can then allocate somewhere else, right? Now you can start buying assets. So just think about it, because it's extremely powerful, right? So now let's talk about the next one, right? Which is lawsuits. So the first thing that I want to tell you is that we live in the United States of America, and this is a very sue-friendly country. So everybody wants to sue you. Your mom wants to sue you. Your brother wants to sue you. Your neighbor wants to sue you. Your coworker wants to sue you. Your employee wants to sue you. Your employer wants to sue you. Your customers, your clients, your business partners. Everybody wants to sue you. I need you to walk around here knowing that that is possible because we're doing the absolute opposite. We're walking around here thinking that we're not going to get sued, right? And this is such a sue-friendly country, right? And so you need to prepare for the worst. I talk to hundreds of people per week, right? And some people, they'll come to me and they'll be like, yeah, I want to get a trust, but I'll wait. I'll wait a week, I'll wait 2 weeks, right? And then next thing you know, 3 months later, it's like, oh, Christina, like I'm getting sued, right? And so you do not want to be that person, right? So let's talk about lawsuits real quick, right? So, um, when it comes to lawsuits, let's just say that you're a business owner, right? And you have an LLC. So you're running a business, right? And you have this LLC, and let's just say that you're running a candle company. And so you're out here selling candles, and then some person goes ahead, buys your candle, and then their house burns down, right? And so now they're coming after you. So the first thing I want to ask you is, what does LLC stand for? Limited liability. Okay, Brittany. All right, Brittany. Limited liability. So limited liability, yep, company. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate your participation. So an LLC stands for limited liability company. So when you hear the word limited liability company, what do you automatically hear, right? What do you automatically know? Limited, exactly, right? So that means that the company, right, liability, exactly. So that means that the company has limited liability. I don't hear the word full liability. I don't hear the word 100% liability. I don't hear the word all liability. I hear limited. So if the company has limited liability, who do you think has another part of that liability? Who is it? Come on, you guys could come off mute. You can let me know. You. Exactly, Chris. Okay, Chris said you. Brittany said the LLC owner. Thank you so much. Okay, I got nothing but geniuses on this call and I appreciate it. Absolutely. So let's talk about this, right? Now, let me ask you something. When you set up your business or your LLC, right? Who did you put as the owner? Who's the owner of the LLC? My name. Thank you, Brittany. Okay, so when we set up, and I did it like this 11 years ago, okay? So when we set up our LLC, the way society teaches us to do it is for us to be the owner of our LLC. Now I'm here to tell you that that means that you are liable for anything that goes down with that company, right? First, the company is liable, but if the company can't handle it, then it goes straight to the owner, okay? So now back to our story, right? We have this LLC, it's a candle company. The customer's house burns down, right? The customer now is able to find out who we are. Why? Because they simply have to go to the Secretary of State where we form that LLC. It's right there on the public records, right? You do an entity search, you put in the name, and boom, all of the information pops up, right? That means the owner's name, the address, the contact information, EIN number, everything. So now they know who to go after. They know who they need to initiate a lawsuit with, right? So now they go to sue you. So now you are being sued, right? Your company is being sued. And let's just say that the judge is like, yep, it was your candle that burned down their $500,000 house. And now you have a judgment for $500,000. right? This is $500,000 that came out of nowhere. But last time I checked, your LLC doesn't have $500,000 liquid to be able to cover that judgment. So then if your LLC can't cover it, then what can the judge do? The judge can pierce through the corporate veil. The corporate veil is that tiny little itty bitty protection that you thought you had, right? You thought that you had an umbrella for a rainy day and that you was safe with the LLC, right? But no, it's limited liability for a reason. That means that the company has a little bit of liability and you have the rest, right? So now the judge is piercing through the corporate veil and going after you, the owner, right? And so now what can the judge do? Well, because the judge is going after you as the owner for that $500,000, the first thing that's going to happen is the judge is going to garnish your bank account, garnish your wages, right? So if you have W-2 or 1099 income coming from anywhere else, boom, gone. If you have $200,000 sitting in your personal checking account, boom, gone, right? They can garnish everything, freeze everything, right? But then if that's not enough, then they can go after the tangible assets, the real property, right? So they can then be able to seize your properties, like the house that you live in with you and your children, right? If you have cars, jewelry, handbags, anything that you have, right? Art, right? Anything that you have, they can now begin to seize your assets in order to cover that $500,000 judgment. So this is what happens when you are being sued. This is why you need to protect yourself from this situation. You don't want anyone knocking at your door telling you that you have to get out of your primary residence with you and your children because you have a judgment on your LLC. So I'm here to tell you that the way that you're structured right now, if you're the owner of your LLC, you are not structured the right way. You do not want to be the direct owner of that company. You want to have a trust on that company, specifically a business trust. That business trust is now going to be the owner of the LLC. So that means that you have to remove yourself as the owner, okay? And so now that business trust is going to be liable. It's going to be 100% liable. You need to have an entity in between you and the business. So the business is the one that's operating. The business is the one that has the clients. The business is the one that's providing the products. The business is the one that's selling the candles, right? But it's owned by the trust, and then you are the trustee that controls the trust. That is how you have to be structured, not the way that you're structured right now, okay? Because you have too much liability and you don't want any of it. You want the trust to be liable, okay? So it's time to get properly structured. Now, let me dive right back in. Give me a moment. Give me a moment. Let me dive right back in. Let's see here. I want you to take a quick look at this video.
Just a quick story of why I'm here. I was sued. I lost everything. And when I say everything, I'm talking about a $700,000 house. I'm talking about 4 vehicles. I'm talking about my bank account. I'm talking about my life savings. I believed in having 6 months of expenses put up, saved up just in case anything happened, lost the career and stuff like that. All of that was gone. And there was no protection for me. Then I had my 3rd bout with cancer. I haven't had any income since 2020, since COVID. As I told you, I think yesterday, I've been looking for a way to protect myself because I have children that are going to depend on me. So I would encourage anyone that would listen to anything that has been taught and said by you, please, 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 if you work hard to gain assets, do whatever you can do to protect your assets. Why do you think they've hid this from us for so long? Why do you think they were the only ones that were saying trust fund babies? It was because they were the only ones who were privileged to know this, who was privy to this knowledge. Now we have it through Christina. And I thank you for your level of knowledge and for not being a gatekeeper and for giving us what we need to know in order to make this happen. So please, 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 if you endeavor to get anything in this world and to keep anything in this world, please, please, please protected. Get your trusts. And I have no reason other than my knowledge and what I've been through. But the only reason I'm here is because I've been through it. So I would encourage anyone.
All right, guys. So do not wait until you're getting sued to protect yourself from a lawsuit. So now the last thing that I wanted to talk about was I have a question for you, okay? So my question to you is this house that we're talking about, right? Your primary residence. My question is, if you didn't wake up tomorrow, that house, how is it going to be transferred to your son's name or your daughter's name or your spouse's name? How is that transfer going to happen? Remember, we spoke about transferring assets. How is that going to happen? That's my question to you. I'm waiting for you guys to answer. Come on now. Yeah, so Brittany said only through the trust. Okay, but if you don't have a trust, then how is that transfer going to happen? So the way that you're structured right now, probate not happening. Okay, exactly. So if you don't wake up tomorrow and you have this house that's in your personal name, it's going to take a judge, right? Depending on the court. So it's going to take a judge. That judge is going to decide if your son or your daughter gets your house, right? So, because at the end of the day, remember, you have to sign over that property, but you didn't wake up. So there's no way for you to sign that property over to your loved one or your children. A lot of people, they get confused, right? And they automatically think that, oh, I only have one son, so everything's going to my one son. I only have one daughter, so everything's going to my one child, right? No, that is the biggest lie that society has led you to believe. Okay? I'm here to tell you the truth. The truth is that your children are losing their inheritance. Okay? I'm witnessing it every single day, and so are you. If you go on realtor.com and Zillow and all of these home pages where they sell homes, you're going to see that these houses are up for sale in the probate process. Why is that? Why are homes being auctioned off by the county? Why is that? Why are homes being automatically going into foreclosure? Why is that? Right? So let me break it down to you. So the reason why that's happening is because we didn't get our affairs in order, okay? So if we don't get our affairs in order, then this is what's going to transpire, right? Our family is going to end up in probate. So let me break down what probate looks like, okay? So when it comes to, let's just say, when it comes to you, let's just say that you have a house, right? Your primary residence where you and your children live. Let's just say you have a car, and let's just say you have a bank account with $100,000 in cash. Okay. Now you didn't wake up tomorrow, but all of these things are in your personal name. The first thing that's going to happen is the state where you're a resident, they're going to create a living estate for you, meaning that they create a living entity, which is an estate for a dead person. Okay. So, for example, if you are a resident of Texas, Texas is going to go ahead and create a living estate for you. Why? Because you didn't do it yourself. And so now, since you were irresponsible, the state has to be responsible now. And now they have to handle your affairs. And they have to now be able to establish this estate for you. Okay, so that's what happens. So now that you have a living estate, right, all of your assets are going to be transferred. Okay, so they're going to be transferred from your personal name into that living estate. And now that living estate is going to go straight into probate court. Okay. So now the estate is in probate court. What happens? Well, the estate needs to be represented by a probate attorney. There's going to be probate court fees, and the judge is now going to decide what happens to those assets. So now that you are in the probate court system, right, and this is your family, right? Your family are the ones that are now being dragged into the probate court system, okay? So what's going to happen is the judge is first going to handle your liabilities. Your liabilities are your debt, right? The things that you owed at the end of life, right? Meaning that you had credit card bills that you racked up, right? Capital One, Discover, all of them, they want to get paid. Those are creditors. They're coming after your estate, okay? The next thing is you have student loans, right? Or you have a mortgage or a bank loan, right? You have some type of debt, right? So you have to think about those loans and those things that need to get paid off, right? Whatever debt that you have, right? One thing that we don't think about is the medical bills. Just imagine the type of medical bills that you're going to rack up at the end of life. You didn't know that you was going to be sitting in the ICU for 10 days. Do you know what that ICU bill looks like? Almost $300,000, right? So, with that being said, you do not want to be in that situation, right? Because a lot of people think, oh, well, I have health insurance. No, those insurance carriers, they want to be reimbursed. Medicare, Medicaid, they want their money back. So they're going straight after your estate for reimbursement. Okay? So you have to know and understand this because a lot of us were not thinking about this, right? Which is so vitally important. So now the judge is going to go ahead and pay the debt off. If you don't have enough liquid cash to cover that debt, what do you think the judge is going to do? So you were sitting in the ICU for 10 days. The medical bill was $300,000. You only had $100,000 in your checking account. So the judge is going to decide to liquidate your assets. Why? Because Medicare and Medicaid need to get paid, right? You think that they're not going to pay Medicare and Medicaid? No. So they're liquidating your assets. If they have to sell the car, they sell the car. If they have to sell the house, they sell the house. So now your house is up for sale. They have to liquidate that house, right? That asset so that they can cover your liabilities. So now you have your children that are now fighting in the probate court system. They're fighting to keep mom's house. They're fighting to keep dad's house, right? Like literally, they are losing their inheritance here, right? And sometimes they fight each other. I know you've heard of this. Sometimes they fight each other because that's just a very stressful situation to be in. And family members, they tend to turn into, you see the ugly side of them, right? So you don't want to be in that situation. So let's just say that they liquidated the house. So now what happens is after the attorney fees are covered, after the probate court fees are covered, and after all of the debt is covered, whatever is left over is what your children get. Your children literally get the leftovers, right? And that's not what you want because at the end of the day, you knew that you wanted your children to get the house. You knew that you wanted your children to get the entire $100,000. You knew that you wanted your children to get your car, but you left it up to the state. You left it up to the probate court system. You left it up to a judge that doesn't know you and a judge that does not know your children. Why would you do that? So I'm here to tell you today that all of us are going to go through probate unless we do one thing. And that one thing is this, the only way to avoid probate is by setting up a trust. A trust is the only thing or entity that can avoid probate. The only entity. There is no other entity. A corporation can't avoid probate. An LLC can't avoid probate. You can't avoid probate. Only a trust. That is why at the beginning of the call, I told you it's the most powerful entity in the world. okay? Because it can do things that no other entities can, including you. So now let me show you what it looks like for you to have your affairs in order. Let's just say that you decided, oh, I want to set up my legacy now. I want to set up my estate now while I'm living instead of waiting until the state does it when I'm dead. Okay? So I want to set it up now. So you set up your trust. Then you transferred your house into the trust. You transferred your car title into the trust. And that bank account that you have in your personal name that has that $100,000, you did a wire transfer and you transferred that $100,000 into the trust bank account. So now you don't have anything in your personal name. So if you don't wake up tomorrow, guess what? Your family gets to grieve in peace. Because you have to understand, they just lost the most important person in their life. Trust me, I know I lost my mom. So you do not want to drag your children through the probate process when they're grieving. That's why it gets ugly. So what you want to do is you want to have your children grieve in peace. And your successor trustee, the person that's supposed to take over after you, they're going to pick up where you left off. They're going to pick up and continue to operate that trust that day, right? And so you have to understand that the with the trust entity, right? That successor that's now operating the trust, your children are going to benefit from the trust. Why? Because that trust has $100,000 and that money is growing and compounding. That trust has a piece of real estate and that is going to be income producing property. So your children are now going to begin to receive distributions and gifts from the trust and money from the trust, right? And that debt that you had, remember the student loans, credit cards, and medical bills, that debt dies with you. Those creditors have to discharge that debt because they have nothing to go after because you transitioned with no assets and no cash in your personal name, and they can only go after things that are in your name and your social security number. They cannot go after that trust because you are not the trust and the trust is not you. So this is the type of mindset that I need you to have because it's so vitally important for you to know and understand this. This is the power play. This is what's going to take you to the next level. For you to be able to walk and move forward on this path and journey and think like this. So you definitely want to make sure that you get your affairs in order, okay? So let's continue on. Let's dive right in. So now this is the wealth building formula, okay? This is where all the sauce is, okay? So let me give you the sauce because that's what you came here for. The wealth building formula. How is it that we're going to build wealth with the trust, right? So I have three pillars here. I have structure, I have credit, and I have invest, okay? So let's talk about structure. Now, what I want to tell you is that if you don't have a trust within your structure, it's time to get restructured. What I want to tell you is that you need to have a for-profit and a nonprofit within your structure. So let me break down my three favorite types of trust, okay? Is a business trust, a family trust, and a tax-exempt nonprofit trust, okay? So these are the three most powerful trusts that I feel like every single family should have within their family organization, okay? So let's break down the business trust. Now, when it comes to the business trust, right, you can operate this trust two different ways. You can operate it like a business to where you offer products and services, or you can operate it like a holding company to where you don't have any products and services and it's going to be used to hold the LLC or the corporation, okay? So you just depend on how you want to operate it, okay? So let's just say that you're operating it as a holding company, right? So remember we said that you have an LLC that is offering the products and services, and then the business trust is going to own the LLC. So remember, you got to remove yourself as the owner of the LLC. So that means that you have to do an article of amendments to the articles of organization. So you remove yourself, you add the trust, and now the trust has full control over the LLC. So let's just say that that LLC generates $100,000, right? So that LLC can then money to the owner. The owner of the LLC is the business trust. So the $100,000 is going to go from the LLC. You're going to do a K-1 distribution straight into the business trust. So now the business trust has $100,000. Now, one thing that I love about the trust is that you get to spend the money first and then you're taxed on the leftovers. And I'm going to say that again. You get to spend the money first and you're taxed on the leftovers, which means that you are putting yourself in a position to where you want to have operating expenses so that you can write those off initially, okay? So what does it cost in order for you to build, what does it cost for you to actually operate the business trust, right? Well, let's just say it costs $30,000. So you're going to write off $30,000 in operating expenses, and now you have $70,000 that's left. So you're going to be taxed on $70,000, right? And so the tax bracket for a trust is anywhere between 10% upwards of 37%. So what you want to do is you want to put yourself in a position to where you're reducing your tax liability, right? So we're not trying to pay that much in taxes. So what we're gonna do is the beautiful thing about a trust is that it can do things that most entities cannot. So a trust can actually distribute the rest of the money to the beneficiary, and then the trust doesn't have to pay taxes on that distribution. So what we are going to do is we're going to distribute $70,000 to the beneficiary. Now, we're going to make the family trust the beneficiary of the business trust. Why would we do this? Because we're entrepreneurs and business owners, and so we need to be able to provide for our family through the family trust, but that money needs to come from the business. So that is why we are going to make the family trust the beneficiary of the business trust. So now that $70,000 goes straight into the family trust, and the business trust doesn't have to pay taxes on it. We write that off. So now that $100,000, $30,000 went to operating expenses and was written off. $70,000 went to the distribution and was written off. And so you have $0 left, which means you have a 0% tax liability, which means that you're done paying taxes for the business trust. Okay, so let's move on to the family trust. So with the family trust, the way that you're going to run this trust is everything dealing with your personal self as well as your family. Okay, everything personal, meaning that your children are going to be the beneficiaries. And here is where you're going to have your primary residence, your insurance policies. Here is where you're going to have any of your other assets, right? Cars, jewelry, things like that, right? And so what's going to happen is with this type of trust, 70,000 just came in. So you got to pay taxes on it, right? This is a for-profit entity. So what happens here is that with the family trust, right? The 70,000, we have to spend the money first and then we're taxed on the leftovers. So let's just say that it costs 60,000 in order to run your family. You have groceries, you have utility bills, you have a mortgage payment, you have private school tuition, you have all kind of stuff going on, right? So it costs $60,000, right? So now you have $10,000 that's left, right? And so that $10,000, you'll clearly pay 10% taxes on it, which is $1,000, or you can do something else. You can do what we call a charitable contribution, which means that you can donate that $10,000 to a charity of your choice, specifically a tax-exempt nonprofit trust. So on the family trust level, right, you have to understand that 70,000 came in, 60,000 went to operating expenses, 10,000 went to a donation to your to the tax-exempt nonprofit trust. So there's 0% left, which means that it's a 0% tax liability. You're done paying taxes. So let's move on to the tax-exempt nonprofit trust. Now, with this type of trust, what happens is it is designated as a 508c1a, which means that you are automatically exempt from not having to file for a 501c3, which means that you're automatically exempt from federal income taxes as long as the money that's coming into this organization is labeled as a tithe, gift, or donation or an offering. Now, the reason why this happens is because of the separation between church and state. So this type of trust can be operated as a church, a ministry, can be operated as a school or any type of educational program, or it could be operated as a traditional charity. Okay. So this is where your philanthropic and your nonprofit endeavors go, right? And so remember when I told you earlier that as a W-2 employee, you can donate up to 60%, it would go into the tax exempt nonprofit trust. So now let's move on to the second pillar, which is credit. So when we're dealing with credit, what I want you to know and understand is that you can build business credit with a business trust. So it's going to build the same type of credit that an LLC and corporation can build, and that is off of the EIN number, okay? And so what you want to do is you want to be able to leverage a second credit profile, right? Because personally, we get lower lines of credit versus a business. A business can qualify for 200,000, 300,000 in credit cards and lines of credit. So you want to be able to have a second credit profile that you can then leverage so that you can get OPM, which is the bank's money, right? Other people's money, the bank's money, okay? So just keep that in mind. And let's move on to the third pillar, which is invest. So these are my two favorite assets. The first one is an index universal life insurance policy, and the second one is real estate. So let's talk about the two because they're vitally important, okay? Now, when it comes to the index universal life insurance policy, right? A lot of people think that life insurance is supposed to be used when they're dead. But in fact, life insurance is supposed to be used when you are living. That's why it's called life insurance and not death insurance. Okay. So there's a lot of living benefits inside of life insurance. So let me break it down to you. Now, when it comes to this type of policy, right? The first thing I want you to know is that your money is going to be growing tax-free, which means that you don't have to pay any taxes on the money that you are putting into the policy. The second thing that I need you to know is that it comes with a death benefit. So that means that if anything happens to you, your life is insured. And if you transition, there's a specific dollar amount that's going to go to your family. Let's just say it's $1 million, right? That $1 million is going to go to your family. But let's just say that you end up getting a heart attack and you can't work. Well, the insurance company will allow you to access up to 800, maybe $900,000 of that $1 million death benefit. So it puts you in a position to know that you're never going to outlive your money, and it gives you that sense of security. Now, the other thing that I want you to know is that there is something called cash value, right? So it's a separate account within your index universal life insurance policy where you're going to be accumulating cash value, right? And this policy is liquid, right? So that means that you have cash that's accumulating in there. So let's just say that your policy is going to cost you $100 every single month, right? The way that it's structured, and structure is very important. That's what I've been talking about this whole time. So the way that your policy is structured, you have to make sure that it's structured the right way, right? So the way that it's structured, let's just say that there's an 80-20 split where 80% of that $100 is going to go to your cash value, and then 20% is going to go to the carrier for the cost of insurance. So now every single month that you're making that $100 payments, you are accumulating cash. So I made my $100 payments and now I have $80 in cash value. I made my $100 payment, I have $80 in cash value. So every single month I have $80, $80, $80, $80, right? That's one of the most beautiful things. But now there's something even better that I need you to know. That cash is going to earn compound interest. So it's not only going to accumulate and stack up $80, $80, $80, but it's also going to earn compound interest, which means that that money is not going to just be sitting there not doing anything. That money is actually going to be put to work, right? That money is actually going to be earning compound interest through the stock market, right? So the money is not going to be directly invested in the stock market. That's too risky. What if the stock market crashes, right? So what happens is you see the word index. Index is actually referring to an indice. An indice is referring to a section in the stock market. So for example, with the stock market, it has many different indices like the Dow Jones or the NASDAQ 100 or even the S&P 500, right? So the S&P stands for Standard and Poor's, and the 500 is tracking the top 500 companies in this country. So usually the performance is, let's just say 8 to 10%, right? It could do way better. It could do worse, right? But let's just say it's the sweet spot, right? So what's going to happen is, let's just say it's doing 10%. The carrier is going to match that and give you 10% return. So that $80, $80, $80, right? Let's say you have $1,000 in there of accumulated cash value. You're going to earn 10% on that $1,000, right? Which is extremely powerful because now your money is making money, right? Which is exactly what you want. You want to put yourself in that position to where you're parking your money in a place to where it's growing. And it's not growing in the bank, I'll tell you that much, right? The bank is not giving you nothing. The bank is giving you 0.000 nothing, right? But inside of your life insurance policy, the carrier is giving you 10%, 8%, 9%, depending on market performance and depending on how your policy is structured, okay? Now, that is what you want to do. You want to park your money in places to where it's growing, to where it's working for you. I'm here to tell you today that you do not have to work for money, that your money has to work for you. That means that you have to park it in the right places to where it's going out to work every single day and bringing back friends, right? So every single dollar is going out and bringing back 10 cents, bringing back 25 cents, right? That is what you need to do. So you have to put yourself in that position in order for you to start to build wealth efficiently and effectively. But that's going to take a mindset shift, right? So just know and understand that, right? Now, what I will tell you is, remember, we want to do what the bank's doing, right? We want to leverage OPM, other people's money, right? And so a lot of people think that the banks are getting rich off of like these products like the mortgages and the bank loans, like the personal loans, the car loans, the credit cards, right? So that's exactly what they're doing, right? So you have to understand, right? If you have a direct deposit, your money is first going straight to Wells Fargo. Your money is not sitting inside of Wells Fargo. We live in a fractional reserve system. So only a small percentage of what you see online, right? The dollar amount that you see online is actually there. Okay. So now the bank is getting rich off of OPM, your money, because you're loaning them money every other Friday when you get a direct deposit. And then they're setting up people with mortgages and car loans and student loans, right? With high interest, right? And so that's how the bank is making money. But you've never asked yourself this question, and I will tell you what the answer is. What is the bank's number one asset? So you can Google this, you can look it up, right? The banks, and I'm talking about Chase, I'm talking about Wells Fargo, I'm talking about Bank of America. Their number one asset is life insurance policies. Okay? It's called BOLI. So BOLI, I hope you're writing this down, stands for bank-owned life insurance. So now my question to you is, if the bank's number one asset is life insurance, what do you think your number one asset should be? So come off mute, let me hear you. Come off mute, let me hear you. What do you think your asset should be? Your number one asset?
The life
Life
insurance.
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 Yes, absolutely. Yes. Your number one asset should be life insurance. That's where you should have majority of your money because your money is going to be growing exponentially, 8, 10, 12%, right? Just depending on the performance of the market. Okay. Now, how does this tie in with the trust? I know you've been waiting for that. So your trust is going to own your life insurance policy. Your trust is going to pay those $100 premiums every single month, right? And that the $100 is just an example. Your trust is going to be the beneficiary of that life insurance policy, and you are going to be the insured. Okay. So what happens is, if anything happens to you, that death benefit of $1 million goes straight to the trust, right? Because you are a human asset inside of the trust organization. Okay, so you have to keep that in mind. Okay, so now let's quickly talk about real estate, because real estate is one of my favorite topics to talk about, right? And let me just give you a little backstory when it comes to real estate, because I absolutely love real estate. It was the reason why I put myself in a position to where I retired myself at 31 years old. Okay. So I used to be a registered nurse. And I was literally in the rat race. I was living paycheck to paycheck. Every other week when I would get paid from the hospital, I would have to go and get a cash advance because I couldn't make ends meet, right? I was young, 23 years old. I had a 1-year-old baby, and I was absolutely frustrated because I was working 12-hour shifts, 5 and 6 days a week, and I was not raising my baby. My baby was sitting at home with my mom, and I was in the hospital taking care of my patients and spending majority of my time with my coworkers. So I was very frustrated, and I said, okay, I need to find another way to make money, right? And so I ended up driving to work one day, and there was this guy named Dan Merrill that he ends up saying, do you want to learn how to flip houses? So I said, yeah, I want to learn how to flip houses, right? And so he's like, okay, we'll go to my 3-day seminar this weekend. So I spent $200. I went to the 3-day seminar in person, and I learned so much about real estate that I've never known in my entire life, right? I'm 23 years old. So what I end up doing was I end up starting my real estate investment company 6 months after that seminar. And I end up buying my first property. And I didn't have to use any of my own money. So I'm from Miami, and I end up buying this little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. It was beat up, run down. It needed to be renovated. I bought it for $89,000, right? And in the midst of that, right, I ended up setting up an LLC just like you guys. I ended up putting that LLC in my name. I ended up putting that property into the LLC, right? And so in the midst of that, my hard money lender became my mentor. So what happened was he told me, Christina, you need to put that property into a trust, right? And now this is a guy worth $200 million. And I'm like, what is a trust? I'm young. I'm 23. Never heard of a trust before in my life. I just set up an LLC in my name, right? He's like, you need to put that property into a trust because it's being renovated. So anything can happen. There could be a slip and fall. It takes one accident for someone to be able to sue you and take their property from you. So I took heed to what he was saying, and I set up a trust, and I've been operating as a trustee ever since, right? That was 11 years ago. So what ended up happening was I end up setting up this trust, and I transfer the LLC. I transfer the property from the LLC name into the trust, right? And end up building my portfolio, right? So as of today, I have a 7-figure portfolio, and it allowed me to retire as a registered nurse, right? And I remember the day that I decided to retire as a registered nurse, right? Because this is one thing about society that I cannot stand. One is that society wants us to depend on the government. Society wants us to depend on the Social Security, right? We have been brainwashed to think a certain kind of way, right? We have been what I call institutionalized from kindergarten. You have to understand this is the system, right? So from kindergarten all the way until high school, right? They taught you what? How to be in a concrete box from 8, 9 o'clock in the morning to 3, 4, 5 o'clock at night, Monday through Friday, and then you have the weekends off. Okay. And we did that pretty much all up until we graduated high school. And then after high school, you went to college, right? And it's the same thing. You in a concrete box, you sitting in a chair, you doing your thing. right? And then after that, you go into your career, right? You get your job, you go into your career, what happens? You work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, right? You got the weekends off. So what society has taught us is that we need to work 40 hours a week for 40 years, and we get to retire when we're 65 years old. And when we're 65, we need to do what? Depend on Social Security. And I'm here to tell you that you do not want to put yourself in a position to where you're depending on Social Security, right? You do not want to put yourself in a position to where you don't have a retirement plan in place. You do not want to put yourself in position to where right now you don't have time freedom. You don't have location freedom. You don't have financial freedom. I'm here to tell you that you can retire early. I'm here to tell you that you can get that freedom now. But it's going to take one, a mindset shift. It's going to take you putting your money in a place to where the money is going to work for you and you don't have to work for the money. And so that's the decision that I made when I was 23 years old, right? So when I was 23 years old, or maybe I was 24 at that time, I was at the hospital in this one particular shift that I had, right? And I was with one of my coworkers. Her name is Audrey. And at that time, Miss Audrey, she was extremely exhausted. And I saw how tired she was. And Miss Audrey, at that time, she was 65 years old. So I looked at her and I said, Miss Audrey, when are you going to retire? I said, you've been a nurse for 40 years. You've done your time. She says to me, Christina, I'm not ready to retire. And I said, why not? I was shocked. Like, why not? She said, because I'm going to wait until I'm 67 and a half so that Social Security can give me another $300. And when she said that, I said, what? You mean to tell me that you're going to work another 2.5 years so that Social Security can give you an extra $300? She's like, yes. I said, okay. So for the rest of my shift, I had to take care of her patients and I had to take care of my patients. But I made the decision that day that I wasn't going to be Miss Audrey. I made the decision that day that I wasn't going to wait until I was 65 years old to retire. I made the decision that day that I was going to give myself 10 years to retire from my career and to stop being a nurse. And later on in that shift, when our shift was over, Miss Audrey, she got into her car, she drove out of the employee parking lot, and she hit the tree right in front of the emergency room, and she died on impact. Miss Audrey never made it to retirement. She never even made it home that day. So I'm here to tell you, do not fall into the trap that society has for you. Do not fall into the trap that the government is going to take care of you in your retirement. Do not wait. A lot of us, we wait. What are we waiting for? What are you waiting for? We're waiting for what? To set up our trust. We're waiting for what? To retire. We're waiting to go on a vacation. We're waiting for to start the business. We're waiting for what? Tomorrow is not promised. I know this for a fact. I witnessed my mother die, and I didn't know that she was going to die. It was unexpected. So I'm here to tell you to stop waiting. Now, let's get back to real estate. So, real estate is the reason why I was able to retire as a nurse, and I retired in 8 years instead of 10. I was able to do it 2 years sooner because of real estate. So, this is what you want to do. When it comes to a trust can own real estate, a trust can own property. One thing that I need you to know is that you do not need to use your own money in order to buy property. You can use OPM, other people's money, the bank's money. Okay. So majority of my properties I got them zero down. Like I did not use any of my own money. Okay. And it started from the very first property. And that very first property that I end up flipping, I bought it for 89,000. I sold it for $235,000. I made six figures off of that one property. And because I was able to make six figures off of my very first property, it shifted my mind. I said, what? I wasn't even making six figures as a nurse. I was making probably $55,000 a year. So I'm like, what? I just made over $100,000 off of one house. So I knew that I wasn't going to be in my career for long. So when it comes to a trust can have, a trust can take out a mortgage. Okay. A trust can take out a home equity line of credit. A trust can own a property. Okay. So a trust can buy the property outright. So let's just say that you want to buy a triplex, right? You're going to buy it in the name of the trust. The type of mortgage that you're going to get is a DSCR. That's a debt service coverage ratio loan. Now, with that type of mortgage, they will lend you up to 80% of the purchase price, which is good because now all you have to do is come up with the 20%, right? And so for this type of mortgage, it's only for entities. So you can't put this mortgage in your personal name. And it's only for properties that are non-owner occupied, which means that it can't be a property that's your primary residence where you're living, okay? So now that we know that we're going to secure a DSCR loan, the next thing is that we need to go find that 20%. So remember, we're using OPM, other people's money, the bank's money. So we're going straight to the bank. So remember, you were busy building business credit for the business trust. And now let's just say that the business trust got a credit card for $50,000. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to liquidate that credit card and we're going to take down that $50,000, right? So we liquidate the credit card. Now that $50,000 goes straight into our bank account. So the first thing that we're going to do is with that $50,000, right? Instead of us going straight to the closing table, we're going to funnel that money into our index universal life insurance policy. Because at the end of the day, we want that money to work for us. So that $50,000 is going to go straight into our cash value in our IUL, right? And it's going to be working for us and it's going to be earning, let's just say that it's going to be earning 10%, right? The market's doing well, it's earning 10%, right? Which is good. So what we want to do is we're going to have that $50,000 working for us, right? But we need to be able to use it for the down payment. So we're going to contact our insurance carrier and we're going to ask for a policy loan. And so because our insurance policy is liquid, the insurance carrier is going to look at our cash value as collateral. And so instead of us having to take out our money from our cash value, what's going to happen is they're going to loan us the money. Okay, so that means that the insurance carrier is going to give us the money from their reserves from their bank account. Our cash value is sitting inside of our policy earning 10%. That's where our cash is, right? And so let's just say that the insurance carrier is like, okay, yeah, I see that you have 50,000 in there. We'll lend you 49,000. And they do a direct deposit right into your bank account for the $49,000. So now you have your 50,000 working inside of your IUL, making compound interest 10%, right? And so now what's going to happen is you're going straight to the closing table. So now you're going to go ahead and purchase that triplex with 80% coming from the DSCR and then the 20% coming from that $50,000 credit card that you liquidated. You just bought this property, okay? You bought it at zero down, meaning that you didn't use any of your own money and you got it for 100% financing. So now you closed on the property. So now it's the first of the month and it's time to collect rent. right? So now that it's time to collect rent, you have 3 doors, right? This is a triplex. Every single door is giving you $2,000, right? So that's $6,000. So let me ask you, where is the $6,000 gonna go, right? So let me get off of this real quick. So where's the first place that the $6,000 is gonna go? Come on, come off mute.
You
Don't.
mean to like how you were saying to put it in the business trust, you would start funneling the money into the business or the private family trust to start doing that?
Okay, that's a good thing. So you're saying that the rental income is going to go straight to the trust. Okay, so that's good. So now when it's time for us to pay bills, right? Where do we move the money? So obviously the rental income is going straight to the trust, but we have to go ahead and deploy that money, right? So where are we going to deploy it? So Chris said the IUL. So that's absolutely right. Right? So what's going to happen is you're going to put yourself in a position to where you're going to pay yourself first before you decide to pay the mortgage, before you decide to pay utilities, before you decide to pay gas, before you decide to pay the credit card, before you decide to pay anything. You are first going to pay yourself first by putting that $6,000 straight into your IUL. And you're going to take out a policy loan for whatever the maximum is, right? Let's just say 5,000. So you put in 6, they said, yeah, we'll lend you 5, and they do a direct deposit for 5, and then you pay your mortgage, your credit card, and whatever's left over, it stays right into your trust, right? And then from there, you can start accumulating cash in your trust so that you can rinse and repeat, so that you can do this process again. Because the goal is for you to have the trust sustain itself. The goal is for you to be able to accumulate as much assets as possible, because that's going to put you in a position to where you can retire young. That's going to put you in a position to where you can get the time freedom, location freedom, and financial freedom. So that's exactly what you need to do. So rinse and repeat this method so that you're able to build that wealth efficiently and effectively, and it's protected inside of the trust. Okay, you do not want to be pouring in your W-2 income into the trust. That's not the game that we're playing here. Okay, you need the trust to be able to acquire its own assets, specifically the life insurance policies and real estate. Okay, and that is how the trust is going to retire you. So my trust retired me when I was 31 years old, and I want the same thing for you. Okay. So this is going to take time, okay? I don't want you to think that this is quick and this is going to happen tomorrow and there's like a magical thing. No. This is a get rich quick. No, this is not that, okay? This is a plan that you want to put in place so that you're able to start implementing all of these things, so that you're able to start building the wealth, right? So just know that, okay? Now, let's continue on. All right, so now last thing I want to tell you guys is for you to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything, and that is stewardship, right? Stewardship is where you're a good steward of the assets, right? And you are putting yourself in a position to where you're controlling the assets, you're conserving, you're preserving, right? Versus the way that we're operating now. So once again, society has programmed us, okay? So society has programmed us to think that we need to be the proud owner of the house, that we need to be the proud owner of the car, that we need to be the proud owner of the cash that's inside of the bank account, okay? That's why society has programmed us to operate out here in society in a specific way. How is the way that we operate? We operate with our name and social security on everything. If you want to go get a job, name and social, please. If you want to go back to school, name and social, please. If you want to get utilities, name and social, please. If you want to buy a house, name and social, please. Why? I think you guys know this, but I'll tell you if you don't know. It's because the government wants to keep tabs on you, right? So your 9-digit number, your social security, is a tracking number. They're able to see everything, right? So that means that they're able to see every single house that you ever lived in. If you want to go and rent an apartment, what are they asking you for? So they're able to see everything, every place that you ever lived, every job that you ever worked at, every school that you ever been in, right? Every dollar that you ever made. Okay? So obviously you know that, but I'm just here to shed some light. Now, so society has programmed us to be the owner of everything. So we need to get away from ownership and we need to move towards stewardship, okay? So now the question then becomes how to transfer your assets, right? And so what I want you to know is that one, the best way for you to transfer your assets is by you setting up a trust. Two is for you to have your children receive trust certificate units, which are TCUs. So TCUs are just like stock certificates. So you know how stock certificates represent ownership in a corporation? Well, TCUs represents beneficial interest in a trust. So the trust is going to go ahead and establish 100 units, and then you're going to go ahead and pass out those units like candy. So let's just say that I am one of your beneficiaries, which I hope that you do one day. And let's just say you gave me 20 units. That means that I have 20% of beneficial interest in the trust. Let's just say that the trust is worth $1 million. That means that my units are worth $200,000. So if that trust was to shut down today, I will get $200,000, okay? So that's how you transfer wealth, by way of trust certificates, because now if I am your beneficiary and I transition, then I can say that my units are going to go to my 3 children, right? And so then my children will inherit the TCUs, and then their children will inherit the TCUs, and then their children will inherit the TCUs. That is what generational wealth looks like, and we have to put preservation practices in place in order for the money to reach the next generation, okay? So why do you think that we have athletes, famous families, and celebrities? Why is it that they make $100 million or, or all this wealth, they accumulate wealth, and sometimes in a short period of time, and then they lose it all, right? They blow it off. Or it doesn't even reach the second or third generation. 90% of wealth is lost by the second and third generation. The reason why that happens is because they don't have the tools for preservation. They don't have the tools for conservation. They didn't have the right tools in place, which is a trust and life insurance. Those are the 2 tools that you need in order to preserve wealth so that it can last 5, 6, 7, 8 generations into the future. And why is it? Well, the reason being is because a trust, right, is going to, the trust has assets, okay? So the trust has a house, and you have to understand that the trust needs to insure all of its assets. So if the trust has a house, it has homeowners insurance, right? And even mortgage protection insurance, right? If the trust has a car, it has automobile insurance. If the trust has cash money in the bank, it has FDIC insurance, right? And so if the trust has human assets, which are you and your children, then the trust is going to have life insurance on those human assets, okay? So what happens is the trust takes out a policy on all of the human assets, which are you and your children, and which are you and your children. Your children are the beneficiaries, and then the future beneficiaries. So those future beneficiaries, those are what we call trust fund babies. Those are babies that are born into the trust, right? And they automatically become a beneficiary. So when a baby is born into a trust organization, once that baby is at least 15 days old, then the trustee puts a life insurance policy on that baby, specifically an index universal life insurance policy, the IULs, right? And so then what happens is the trust is now paying $100, $100, $100 every single month, right? And so now what's happening is that premium that they're paying every single month is accumulating cash, 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 cash. But then it's compounding, right? So it's compounding, 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 right? And so that trust fund baby is going to grow up. So let's just say that that trust fund baby grows up, and now they are 18 years old. A lot's happening at 18, right? And so let's just say they come up with this grand idea that they need a new set of Hot Wheels because they need to be able to drive to campus, right? So they're like, hey, I need a car. Clearly, they can go down to the dealership, they can pull their brand new credit, and they can get into a high interest car loan, right? And be paying the dealership $1,000 a month for a $30,000 car. Or because they're a trust fund baby in a trust organization, they can come to the trust, they can request a loan from the trustee. So the trustee is then going to write a check for $30,000 and hand it to that trust fund baby. That trust fund baby is going to go buy their car cash, right? But remember, we don't want to spendthrift, right? What is a spendthrift? Those trust fund babies that want to blow the dough. So we don't want to spendthrift. So we're going to say, hey, you have to be responsible. There's terms and conditions that come with that loan. So you have to pay the trust $300 a month, right? So now they're being financially responsible. They're paying the trust $300 a month, right? Let's just say they decide to default. They're like, hey, I don't want to pay the trust anymore, right? So if they default, that's perfectly okay. And the reason being is because the money did not come from the trust. The money originated from the trust fund baby's life insurance policy. Because what occurred was when that trust fund baby came to the trustee to request the $30,000, that trustee contacted the carrier that was holding that trust fund baby's policy and requested a policy loan for $30,000. And so the carrier obviously saw the liquid cash and was like, yeah, direct deposit, boom, right? And so that's how that trustee was able to cut the check for $30,000 to the trust fund baby, right? And so because the money did not originate from the trust, right? Because that loan originated from the life insurance policy of the trust fund baby, that loan doesn't need to be paid back, right? The loan is automatically deducted from the death benefit. And at this point, that trust fund baby have a death benefit of $5 million, right? Because that baby been insured since he was 15 days old, right? And so it's okay that the trust fund baby defaulted because once that trust fund baby transitions, which we know that's one thing that's guaranteed, right? So once that trust fund baby transitions, that death benefit of $5 million is going to go straight to the trust minus the 30,000. And now the trust is replenished with $5 million minus 30,000. And so that's what preservation of wealth looks like. It looks like the trust needs to ensure the trustees, the beneficiaries, and the future beneficiaries. Because now that every single time that someone transitions and then a new person is born, that money is being recycled into the trust. And the trust organization is growing and growing and growing, right? So we're conserving and preserving the money that's inside of the trust, which is extremely powerful, right? So you need to put yourself in that position, right? So the trust could be your new way of doing business, of saving taxes, of protecting your assets. You have to treat this like a big business, not like a small mom and pop shop, because this is not what that is, okay? This is your legacy here. This is your foundation here. So if you were to go build a house, right? Do you want to build that house on a soft foundation or do you want to build it on a hard foundation? Right? On a solid foundation. So I already know what your answer is, right? So here's the books that I recommend. What Would the Rockefellers Do is a really good book that teaches you about the link or the marriage between trust and life insurance policies. The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1 and 2 teaches you about trusteeship. Family Wealth teaches you about how to run your family like a business. Each of us should be running our family like a business, where you're the CEO of your family, your spouse is the CFO, your children are secretaries. And then the last one is the Complete Book of Trust that teaches you about the different types of trust. Remember at the beginning of the call, I told you that there's hundreds of different types of trust. So do your due diligence.
Well, kudos to you all. Again, Christina, it's been a wonderful experience. I've been looking at your videos on YouTube for a while, and there are a number of people offering trust these days. Don't own anything, control everything. That is the sentiment. It seems like the playing field is being leveled now from the rich and people who weren't privy to this information. So thank you for being such a great asset to a community that didn't have this information. And you made it so simple. Thank you for the recordings. Thank you for the step-by-step instructions, things that we can go back and look at. So we do appreciate you. This has been an overall great experience. I definitely will recommend you to others.
All right, you guys. So what I want is to let you guys know that we can work together. So if you are interested in setting up the 3 trusts that I mentioned earlier, the business trust, the family trust, and the tax exempt nonprofit trust, I do have a program showing you step by step how to do that. Okay. So how to get properly structured, how to protect your assets. So you have 2 options. The first option is do it yourself, which means that you're going to do it independently with our online course. So the course comes with 43 video modules, and the way that it is designed is for you to watch the modules, for you to download the templates, and for you to be able to set up your trust and customize it to your business, to your family, and to whatever charity that you want or whatever nonprofit that you want. So you get lifetime access to the course. You also get all of the resources and ebooks. So for example, the books that I just mentioned, you get those in electronic version, and some of those books are valued at over $800. And then resources, meaning that if you need to file taxes, we give you the paperwork. If you need to transfer your house, we give you the paperwork. If you need to transfer your car, we give you the paperwork. If you need to open up a bank account, we show you step by step, we give you the paperwork, right? So you get all the resources that you will ever need in order to operate a trust efficiently and effectively. We show you step by step how to do it the right way. And then you get access to our community. So we have a community with over 2,500 trustees, okay, that have been operating for the last 4 or 5 years. And these individuals are experienced, okay? So they have bank accounts, they have properties in trust, they have cars within trust, right? So they've been operating in trusteeship. You get full access to them, okay? On our private Facebook community and our Telegram chat, okay? So you get to chat with them back and forth, right? Every single day. And these individuals are in your city, they're in your state. Okay, so you get to have a family of like-minded individuals. Okay, and that is extremely powerful. So that is definitely what sets us apart. So with the course, it's only $997, and like I say, you get lifetime access. Now the second option is done with you. Done with you is where we do it together on Zoom. So you still get access to the course, the community, the resources, and the chat. But now you get access to our live trainings, and we do them every 3 to 4 weeks. So our next one is July 6th to the 10th. So the workshop is Monday through Friday from 11 in the morning to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I come on live as well as the other 2 educators in the program. So I'm not just the only one, okay? And what happens is we show you step by step how to set up everything. We hold your hand through the whole process. So on Mondays, we focus on the business trust. So I'm gonna break down every single paragraph of the trust, right? So this trust is 50 pages. So I'm going to be in your face live, breaking down 50 pages. I break down every single paragraph so that you can understand what's inside of the trust, so that you can operate the trust the right way. I will tell you, being a trustee for the last 11 years, that I have spoken to thousands of people, and people, they have trust and they don't know what to do with it, right? They don't even know what's inside of their trust. They're too intimidated to operate the trust, right? You don't want to be in that space. And so we encourage you and empower you. And the only way that you're going to be encouraged and empowered is if you know what's inside of your trust, if you understand it, if you have clarity, right? If you have that knowing, right? Because then that empowers you to know that you can operate as a trustee. So that's why we want you to understand the contents of your trust so that you can know how to run it the right way, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to be the trustee. You want to have full control over the money and the assets, okay? So after we go through step by step how to set up the trust, then I open up the floor for Q&A so I can answer all of your questions. On Tuesday, we focus on the family trust. So we set up, I show you step by step how to set up the trust. I teach you everything that's inside of the trust, and then we open up the floor for Q&A. On Wednesday, we focus on the tax exempt nonprofit trust, and then I show you how to get your tax exempt EIN number and how to go down the online ordination process if you want to get ordained. So you have to understand with this type of atmosphere, right? You are doing it as a group. So there's other individuals on the Zoom call that are asking really good questions in those Q&A sessions, and they're asking questions about things that you didn't even know that you wanted to know. So you start feeding off of their energy and you start learning more. So it's very powerful for you to be in that space, okay? Now let's talk about Thursday. Thursday is all about OPM, other people's money, meaning the bank's money. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to get your EIN number so that you can go open up your bank account. So then I'm going to give you a list of banks, the top banks that I bank with and that a lot of the other community members bank with that have that you can get a trust account with that they're not going to ask you to provide your trust, okay? And then we'll go through banking procedures. So I'll show you step by step how to open up your bank account. And then we'll go through operations so that I can teach you how to operate within those trust funds. And then I show you how to document how much you're going to fund the trust with. Okay, so how to move money around in and out of the trust. And then our funding manager comes. Our funding manager is one of our educators, and he's going to teach you about business credit and business funding so that you can get the OPM that you need in order to one, get the real estate, and two, funnel that money into your life insurance policies, okay? And then we dive into Q&A and we answer all of your questions. And then we go to Friday. On Friday, it's all about asset protection and trust taxes. So on Friday, when we are going over asset protection, the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to take an inventory of your assets, right? So, or you're going to take an inventory of your assets so that you know which assets qualify to go inside the trust, because not all assets do, and which assets are going to remain outside of the trust. Okay, it's very important for you to know that so that you can begin to transfer the assets. This is the biggest mistake that I see everyone make when it comes to transferring assets, and I don't want you to make that mistake. So what I do is I show you step by step how to transfer your property by way of a quit claim deed, where to record it, everything. Then I show you how to transfer your vehicles if you have the title to your vehicle. And then I show you how to transfer your businesses, remove your personal name, add the trust, and then document that the trust is now liable, right? And then lastly, our CPA comes in. So our CPA is an expert when it comes to all forms of taxes, but especially trust taxes. So he's going to teach you step by step how to file taxes for the trust. He's going to answer all of your tax questions if you have LLCs, corporations, and trusts. And then we're going to dive into Q&A where we're going to answer all of your questions. So that's the workshop. Now you have lifetime access to the workshop. We do the workshops every 3 to 4 weeks, right? So like I said, the next one is July 6th to the 10th. We have one scheduled in August, September, October, November, December. So that means that you can attend every single workshop because you have lifetime access, okay? So not only do you get the course, but you also get lifetime access to the live trainings. We also have master classes. So we usually have master classes on real estate, cryptocurrency, the infinite banking, being your own bank with the life insurance policies, mindset, things like that, okay? So this community is a community that is growing, and we want you to be a part of it. So the workshop is only $2,500. So if you guys are
I just wanted to
interested,
say another.
then if you guys are interested, then all you have to do is go to the website, which is wealthytrustee.com. So let me just show you one more video from one of our attendees for the workshop.
I just want to say another thing too. So she's 100% because I've been to probate and it's not fun. It's not fun and it's very costly. So what she's charging is pennies. I mean, I actually paid $5,000 for probate. And it took a whole year and a half for us to sell our house. And my husband was the only son that she had. So the house, you would think it would automatically go to him, and it didn't. We still had to go to probate, spend $5,000, go to probate, and we had to pay the mortgage for a whole year and a half. So it was a mess, I'm telling you. And she's only asking, what, $2,500 for the program? It is just not expensive at all. Trust me, it is a lot of information, so you have to be ready. Listen to the tutorials that she gives you because you could be prepared because it's a lot of information, but she's very thorough. And I appreciate you so, so much. And then I found out my husband, we did this a while ago, about 10 years ago. We spent $7,000 for an attorney and it was trash. What she said about it, putting your name and all that stuff on it, the guy was trash. And your program is not as thorough as an attorney as it's well worth it. I'm going to say that. So I'm just letting you guys know this girl is the real deal. I even called her office because I didn't believe she was the real deal. And she actually answered the phone. I was like, oh my God, she answered the phone. She said, people think that about me. I was like, because this is YouTube. You know, we think everything's a scam. Yeah. You answered the phone. I was like in shock. So that's it. That's what I want to say. Thank you so much again. I appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, you guys, so just take action on the information. So what I want to do now is I want to show you what a trust looks like. So hold on, let me show you what a trust looks like real quick. And then I will show you what the program looks like, and then I'll open up the floor for Q&A. So this is an example of one of our trust templates. So everything that you see in red is what you're going to be customizing for your organization and for your family, okay? So like I said, I break down every single paragraph so that you can understand what's inside of your trust. You're going to be too afraid to operate your trust if you don't understand what's inside of it, okay? I see it every single day. And then this is the actual program, okay? So if you're gonna either do it yourself or you're gonna do it with us with the live workshop, this is what you get access to. And it's lifetime access. So first you go through trust entity where you learn what a trust is, the grantors, trustees, beneficiaries. So you learn the different parties involved, and then you learn how to set up the tax exempt trust. So we give you every single section like the declarations, the bylaws, the schedule. You learn how to set up the family trust, the business trust. You learn about tax strategies, how to operate exempt versus for-profit and nonprofit, and what distributable net income is, and how to avoid tax evasion, okay? We're not doing that. And then you go through asset protection where you learn how to take an inventory so you can create the bank account, the brokerage to transfer your house, your cars, your insurance policies, your businesses, and how to have board meetings. Do you know how many people are operating entities and never had a board meeting for their entity? We show you how to do things the right way. And then we go into wealth creation where you learn how to set up the business, credit, and then you learn how to invest in the stock market and how to do the infinite banking with the life insurance. We go through Legacy Crest, and then you have your resources and your ebooks. So if you guys are interested, the link is inside of the chat. And for those of you guys that take action in the next 24 hours, you guys can enjoy 20% off using the discount code TRUST20. So those are only for people that are willing to take action today and as late as tomorrow. You guys get that 20% off, okay? And if you don't have the entire amount, then just know that we have payment plan options available, and then you can also put in a deposit. So if you want that 20% off, but you can't pay in full today, then put the $200 deposit, and then that'll hold your spot so that you can get the 20% off, and it rolls you right into a payment plan that you get to choose, you know, your flexible payments. So with that being said, I want to open up the floor for Q&A. So let me know what questions you guys have based off of the information that I went over today. I know it was a lot. So anybody have any questions? Brittany. Brittany, you can come off mute.
So sorry about that. Hi, Christina. Can you hear me?
Hey, yeah, perfectly. How are you?
I'm doing wait. I'm sorry. I was switching from phone and stuff because I was. Let me try to exit this one out. My apologies. Okay, I am so sorry about that. I was switching from card to this laptop. And so, first I want to say thank you so much for taking this time to teach this knowledge that we should have been taught in grade school up and through college. Just want to throw all my degrees away because it was pointless, compared to this information. So thank you.
You're
Um,
welcome. I don't even use my degree, so I get it.
They're pointless. I'm almost and so I just found your channel yesterday, and so I've just been catching up on everything, taking a lot of notes,
It's a
and
lot in there, girl.
a lot. You went into everything like so well that I was able to actually understand it and then come up with some questions. And the one thing that you brought to my attention is that LLC, the limited liability. The rest of it's on us. And so when we're going to do the amendment to the articles, would you recommend like to redo a new EIN? So I have an LLC. It hasn't generated any income yet. So I'm so glad that I came across you before it's gotten to that point. So would you recommend getting a new EIN? Like would I reach out to IRS or would I just generate a new EIN? And then so that way it's not tied to my name, or just redo the articles with.
That's a great question. So you don't have to redo the EIN, especially if you built credit or if you have a bank account and stuff. So that's already established. So all you have to do is just update the IRS. So there's a form, it's called a 8822B, is for entities. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna fill out that form and you're gonna let them know that there's a new responsible party, which is the business trust.
Okay. Um, and then so I would need to, and then my thing is, so I don't have a home right now, and I know that whole process about that. My family's currently going through it, which is, it's difficult.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
I know, right? And so my question is, I'm thinking, and it's, family within family issues. And so I was considering to use a VA loan, my VA loan, to purchase a home for my elderly family who I'm still connected with because that's who's facing the issues. And I was curious, I guess, would you be able to, I guess I do definitely want to connect with you to get us like any assistance with that, because like my car, I won't finish paying that off until the end of this year. So pretty much what I'm saying is that technically I have no assets yet, but now that I know all of this, I want to start acquiring those assets. One, like a home for them, putting it in a trust. One, two, when my vehicle is paid off the end of this year, putting it in a trust. My question is, should I wait until the end of this year, like October, to start doing these things? Or should I start generating this trust now, even though I technically don't have any real assets?
Yeah,
Besides
so
what
So that's a wonderful question, Brittany, and I will tell you, do not wait. This is not an overnight process. Okay. So one is going to take you time to understand the trust. And that's why we give you lifetime access, because retention is powerful. So you want to rewatch the training videos. You want to attend multiple live workshops so that you're able to, so what I've noticed is that a light bulb goes off when you hear it a second time, right? Just imagine if you was to rewatch this, right? You hear it a second time, you're like, oh, I didn't hear that the first time, right? And so you actually get to learn more. Another thing is that before you even have the house, remember we said we want to build that house on a solid foundation, not a soft foundation. You want to have the trust ready to go, right? You want to have it fully funded. You want to have that bank account, right? You want to have that life insurance policy intact, right? You want to have all these things in place before you even go to acquire the assets. I will tell you that what we did is we did it backwards. We got the trust after the assets. You're the one that's doing it the right way because you're establishing the legacy and the foundation first before you acquire the assets so that the trust is able to then protect it. So do not wait.
Okay, perfect. And then you mentioned the IUL and the cash value, and I realized that I have a cash value policy, but it's with uh disabled veterans. And so I'm thinking that I don't know if I'll be able to directly deposit money into that. So I filled out that form for the I believe it was
Okay,
Fidelity
wonderful. Yes.
to see, how to get that started. So that way, I don't know if I'll be able to take that, the check that I'm receiving, to put it into that to start generating these funds. So, I guess, am I able to book a call with you, or how does that go? Do we just wait for the next class, or this
Uh,
upcoming?
yes. So we have openings as early as Friday. So are you talking about the link that's inside of the chat, that our insurance intake form?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So either myself or a member of my team, we're going to give you a call. And then from there, we will talk about all your options when it comes to you setting up the life insurance policies. But the
Okay.
one that you set up right now, it sounds like it was set up through the military, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's structured differently and although it builds cash value, it has a higher death benefit.
Mhm.
So that one is not structured for ultimate cash accumulation, cash value, and for you to actually build wealth with it. So
Okay.
it's totally different. And then like, I'm not even sure if you're even getting any returns or dividends on that cash. So the one that I was educating you guys on today, you get higher returns because it matches what the stock market is doing.
Okay. And then lastly, I know that you mentioned that you were in real estate, and I saw it in the chat as well. And I've been working or trying to work real estate for a few years, right? Where I've been doing like surplus funds and then doing other things, but it wasn't what was making me happy to where I'm like, I want to get up and do this every day. And so I was interested in what you were saying about like flipping homes and like getting that information and learning from you. Am I able to do that as well?
Yeah, so we have master classes. So me, I don't teach any real estate strategies directly. Like I don't have live master classes, but I do have trainings on it. So the trainings are not inside of the program. The program is just for trust. So I do have a separate video vault where I have real estate trainings. It's called the Entrepreneur Video Vault. So that's $199 if you want to get access to it. And then we have master classes from a bunch of real estate professionals. So like one of our educators has 150 houses. She teaches you her strategy. Another one's into Airbnb. Another one is into mobile homes. So like for me, I was able to acquire I just got into mobile homes this year, and so far my trust has two mobile homes, right? And it's making $1,200 a month. So there's a bunch of different strategies, not just one, and you can learn it here, and that's through our master classes.
Okay, I definitely want to, get connected in that manner. So I guess I'll just email the support email or something like that to
Yeah,
get.
the email that you should be sending it to is info at sevenwaystowealth.com. So that's the email.
Okay, thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Thank you, Brittany. I appreciate your participation and you staying through the whole workshop.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Have a good night. Any other questions? Let me check the chat. Any other questions? Is there a
Yeah.
max on how
Hey, can
many
you hear
times?
me?
Yes, perfectly. Hey, Vincent, how are you?
Hi, hi, I'm very well. Thank you for asking. And I came on your course a little while back, maybe a year or so ago, and told my family about it. And circling back around to this because I've been really trying to get everyone into this, my family and myself. So I want to get into this DIY. Now I'm wondering about support. Once I purchase that, um, what type of support comes along that track?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So we have dedicated staff to walk you through the whole process. So we have a staff member. So one, you can book a call, and it's pretty much Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. The second thing is you can call our number. So if you look inside the chat, you can call us at any point in time and our staff will answer. And if they don't answer, they will call you right back the same day. Okay. Unless it's after hours, like if it's after 5 p.m., then they'll call you the next day. But we're Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And we have dedicated staff. So if they're not able to help you, then they will escalate it to me so that I'm able to assist you. So you can either email them, however it is that you want to do it if you have questions, right? So you can email support@7ways2wealth. You can call us or you can book a call. Those are the three main ways. The second way is that we have our community, right? So that's why we have the Telegram chat. That's why we have the Facebook community, because you have to understand that these people, right, they have been your community members. They have been doing this for 4 years, 5 years, right? They've been operating. So they have already gone through what you're about to go through. And so if you are stuck, you can just put it inside of the chat and anyone will be able to chime in. So I have two team members that monitor the chat. Even if you put the simplest question in there or the most complex question in there, you will get a response, right? Inside of the community or inside of the chat. So, and then we have Q&A sessions. So just like how we are on this Zoom right now, we have live Q&As to where you're going to jump in. I'm right here in your face. You're going to ask me the question right here in your face. And this is after you've gone through the DIY and you're like, hey, I'm stuck. Hop into the Zoom, hop into the Q&A session, and I will answer your question live. And it's in a group setting. So that's the type of support that we provide. And we're just here to support you and hold your hand. And my team is here to hold you accountable. So that's exactly what we do. We don't leave you stuck. We help you get unstuck. Vincent, you still there?
Can you?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you now. You were on mute.
But I was saying I'm gonna go ahead and get started. My mom to get our assets protected.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the most important thing. You don't want to keep pushing it back and causing any delays. You want to protect those assets as soon as possible. So I'm glad that you're deciding to move forward, and I'm proud of you, Vincent. So we're looking forward to welcoming you into the community, okay? All right.
Thank
So
you.
Laura, you're welcome. So Laura has a question. She said, is there a maximum amount of times that you can ask for a loan? So you can ask for unlimited loans and all of the loans are forgiven. And does it depend on the carrier? So the loan amount depends on the carrier. So some will let you borrow up to 98% of what's in there, 97%, 95%. So it just depends on the carrier as far as the loan amount, meaning the percentage of how much cash value you have that they will lend you. And then what if you're denied for a policy due to any medical background? Then we can find alternatives. So there might be a situation where you are denied because of a medical, and so we can look for another carrier and we can look for other means of getting you a policy that doesn't require a medical background. And then the next question is, what are the 7 ways to wealth that you teach in your program? So we have a lot of them, but also, do you still offer the crypto pairing trading? Yeah. Okay, so we have crypto master classes every single Monday at 7 p.m. So you have to be in the program in order to get access to our crypto training. So we have a crypto educator and he teaches you from A to Z about crypto. Okay. We have a Forex trader that is an educator and And you will learn about the Forex trading if you go to those classes. So we have these are separate classes, okay? They're only available to our community members, okay? So if you want to learn about that, then you are able to learn about that. We teach about structure, we teach about real estate, we teach about OPM and credit. So, and we teach about the infinite banking. And what's the other one? I'm drawing a blank right now. So did I say real estate? So those are the things that we educate on. So let's see. The next question is, do you need to attend the class each day for 5 days from 11 to 12? So, I mean, each day is different. So the expectation is that you're able to attend the entire workshop because we build on what happened the previous day. So if you are able to, if not, the workshops are recorded and we will upload them to your student portal immediately after the workshop is done. So sometimes you can only do 4 out of the 5 days. So the day that you miss, you watch the recording, and then my team and I will be able to catch you up to speed if you have any questions. The next question is, can you put your home into a trust if it has a mortgage? Absolutely. So you have the deed to your property. So as long as you have the deed, you're able to deed it over from your personal name into the name of the trust. Your mortgage is going to remain intact, okay? Your mortgages are going to remain on your credit and in your personal name, okay? So, Talk Money Coach has a question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Hello, hello. How are you?
I'm wonderful.
Good, good, good. Well, always love these, your webinars. I'm talking as an affiliate. Is it okay if you answer a couple questions as an affiliate?
Yeah.
Um, so I recently had a client make a purchase, and they did the done with you, and one of the things she has a nonprofit already, and she was questioning. Oh, she's about to make her last payment. You know, she was on the payment arrangement, so she's about to make it tomorrow. But one of the things she asked me was, if she has a nonprofit, how does that work out with the ministerial trust, and what how the structure, format, or even the roles between the two? How does that work?
That's a wonderful question. So typically what you're going to do is you're going to either have the existing nonprofit be the beneficiary of the ministerial trust, or you'll have the ministerial trust be on the board of the nonprofit. So it just depends on how she wants to structure it, but but definitely connect both of them.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Laura has a question. So, are the other courses available to access that are offered with any packages you buy? So, you have access to all of the master classes. The only thing that is not, that you don't have access to is the Entrepreneur Video Vault. So, that has over 100 videos for entrepreneurs where we teach you how to set up a business, how to invest in real estate. We teach you a little bit about mindset, cryptocurrency, structure. And so that's for entrepreneurs. And that is a separate fee. And that is $199. But everything else that I mentioned are master classes that we have inside of the program, and you can attend live. So for example, we have a master class tomorrow, okay? A master class is with our funding manager, and he's going to teach you step by step how to establish business credit and business funding. So that's only for our community members. So if you guys join tonight, then you'll have full access to our master class tomorrow. Right. On Monday, we're going to be teaching about cryptocurrency. So which cold wallets to have, right? How to do trading, right? How to convert to these tokens, the tokens that we recommend, all this stuff. Our educator teaches you like pretty much how to operate decentralized and private and how to connect it with your trust. So you definitely want access to that, right? So, with that being said, that is for our community members, okay? There's a lot that goes on in our community privately, and that's why it is private. So you cannot find our Facebook community, you cannot find our Telegram chat, you can't even look for it, okay? Once you are in the program, then we give you access to it, okay? So, how do you purchase? So you have to go to our website. So my team is going to, my beautiful assistant Ivy, she's going to go ahead and drop the link for you guys one last time. And our website is wealthytrusty.com. So you can go ahead and choose if you want to do it yourself or if you want the done for you workshop. You get lifetime access to both. And as soon as you are paid in full, right, then you get access to everything. So you get access to the program, to the workshops, to all of the recordings, all of the master classes, Q&A sessions, you get access to everything. So you get to get started right away. All right, any other last questions?
One last question, Christina. The client I was referring to, she wanted to make her last payment. She can't find the link for some reason. Is there a way? Would she send an email to support, or what would she want to do for that?
Yep. So any questions, you can send an email to support. You can also text us. So she can send us a text message and then the team will be able to assist her with her last payment. So support at sevenwaystowealth.com, or you can text the phone number 305-749-9215. And so our team, they're available right now up until 10 p.m. And then we will get back to you tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Sweet.
All right, perfect. Yep. So there was one last question I seen. It was about, let's see, what was the question? About the due on sale clause. So that is an accelerated clause that your mortgage lender has the option of doing. And that is only applicable if you transfer your property from your personal name to someone else's personal name, or from your personal name to like an LLC or a corporation. So you don't really have to worry about the due on sale clause. So any other final questions? If not, we're going to wrap it up for tonight. I appreciate you guys so much for being here and staying throughout the entire call. So just take action on the information that I shared with you guys tonight. Go do your research and your due diligence. I always encourage that you are able to confirm anything that you learned here during the webinar and just take action, right? Because this could be your new way of doing business, right? And it can change the trajectory of your life, and not only your life, but your kids' life and your kids' life, because now what is going to be happening is you're going to be raising your children as trustees, right? And so you have to understand your children, they cannot inherit your 9 to 5 job, right? But they can have a position within the trust, right? And they can receive their inheritance that way. So that's what you want to do. I see another question. Will the payment plan, we won't have access to the full program until the last payment? That's correct. So you do have to be paid in full in order to get full access to everything. So as long as you're on the payment plan, then once you make that last payment, then we will give you access. So with that being said, you guys have a beautiful rest of your night. I appreciate you being here, and we look forward to seeing you in the masterclass tomorrow, to joining you into the community, and to seeing you on our next upcoming workshop which is going to be July 6th to the 10th from 11 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, Brittany, and good night, everybody. Bye.